Now let's talk about the design of your graphic design history journal. Our major project this semester is a graphic design history journal of styles. So the very first assignment is to create a draft of only the first spread, the Victorian era and arts and crafts. You're going to have the chance to earn up to 10 points with this first draft. And I'm hoping that you'll get it done early before the due date and send it to me because I want to help you earn that full 10 points. Once you have the model, it's going to go very quickly because you're going to just repeat the formula that you have established that has been approved. And by repeating that look and feel on the remaining 12 spreads and revising the draft, you're going to have a beautiful unified journal, which is what we're aiming for. I'll make journal comments on the draft, and you can listen to them, revise, resend it to me to check, and then once you have approval, you can just move forward. I've also created step-by-step videos that are in modules, tutorials, as well as general information. And I worked together with one of the alumni from our class, James Allen. I figured that you can learn a lot from a student who's already gone through this assignment. And I'm hoping that it'll answer all of your questions if you've never worked in InDesign or Word before. So you can use the software of your choice, but InDesign is definitely preferable. It is the powerful layout software that graphic designers use. So even if you're not a graphic design major, I want to challenge you to give it a try because we're going to provide resources that will walk you through it every step of the way. Now, when you're a student, you can get discounted rates on the Adobe Creative Suite, and that includes Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, and InDesign. And during the coronavirus pandemic, we're making special arrangements to ensure there is equity for all students who enroll in our classes. After the pandemic, you will have an opportunity to go into the lab in the event you don't have the software, and you can work with our lab techs to create your journal. Even though you're learning fully online, you can work online with one of our wonderful lab techs, and they're very familiar with the project and can walk you through it. So to get started, I want to launch Adobe InDesign. I'm going to click Create New. And here in the menu, I want my dimensions to be 8 inches by 8 inches. And in the event that you're not in inches, you're in some other unit of measurement, you can click on the pull-down menu and switch to inches. This is the correct orientation, and I need 28 pages for my entire journal for the semester. I want to start on page 1 with 1 column, and all of my margins will be 0.5 inches all the way around. So now I click Create, and InDesign has just created my entire document. Here you see all 28 pages. We have the front cover and the back cover. And if I size this down just a little bit and I scroll through the document, you can see here all the pages that I'm physically going to be working on. So I want to begin the Victorian era arts and crafts draft on spreads 2 to 3. So that's where I'm going to begin designing. So let's talk about the draft requirements. We're going to look at some samples and I'll go through it with you again, but you need to have the name of the style. So if you look to the right for the draft, the name of the style is Victorian era. And that'll be on the left side of your page, and on the right will be arts and crafts. You must have the style characteristics. I want the exact text that I'm giving you. Don't try to find additional style characteristics. Please don't edit out anything. And you want to use them exactly as I give them to you. This is what you're going to study when you take the midterm and the final exam. So by using the style characteristics and actually designing with them, it's going to cement it in your head what this style is all about. And you're going to have 3 to 4 key artists. And I give you a list of all the artists. They're in your syllabus. So don't be trying to find artists. Use the list I give you. So remember, when you're searching for imagery, you want to go to your browser and always search by the name of the artist, never by the name of the style. Again, I give you the list of artists for each style. So pick one of those names because those are designers from each design style that we're covering this semester. So for example, in arts and crafts, I might search for William Morris. And I really like Google Chrome because in Google Chrome, in this search engine, you can click on tools. And when you do you see what pops up here? Size, color, type, time, usage rights. So under images, I could search for a color image if I wanted, or I could search just for a black and white image if that's what I'm looking for. And when I find an image that I like this one, the Kelmscott Press logo, I would click on it and I would actually go to that file because I want to have a really large image. That way, when I bring it into my file, I would drag it to my desktop and I could put it in a folder basically to use for that spread. But because the image started out so large, you can see this is 800 by 502. I can downsize it and it's going to be really crisp and sharp. You never want to select a really small image and blow it up because it's going to look really pixelated. So again, when you search, remember to always search by the name of the artist, never by the name of the style, or you'll get incorrect images. Here are some tips that will help you do well on your journal. We've already talked about working with imagery and to always make sure to search by the name of the artist, never by the name of the style. But another thing to be mindful of is line breaks. You want to watch out for widows and orphans. You don't want to have one word by itself, but try to break the text in a way that the reader would break it naturally if they were to say it. So on the right below here, we see some examples of bad line breaks. Do you notice in the red? What I've created is one word by itself. Field is very lonely there. My line length is also really long on the second line of arts and crafts, and then really short on the third line, and then long again and short. And notice how that creates holes in my text. Take a look at the very right column where it says better line breaks. Now look at arts and crafts. Here the subheads are in italic and the line breaks are evened out so that it's flowing really well and I don't have the big holes that I have. I also don't have one word by itself. Now, in the subheads, they are subthoughts of the main thought. So for example, stylized natural forms, a subhead is leaves flowers. So we want to differentiate it somehow. In this case, I've made it italic, but you could make it another font, or you could make it a smaller point size. There are many ways to differentiate your subheads, but you do want to differentiate them. When you're a graphic designer, working with type is a big deal. So thinking about the fonts you're going to use for your journal is very important. There are 4 basic classifications of type: serif, sans serif, decorative, and script. Serif, as you see, has little feet. Sans serif does not. Decorative is a more display font that you might see in a magazine or on a package. And script is based on handwriting or calligraphy. For this journal of styles, I would stick with serif or sans serif, or I would mix serif and sans serif. I definitely would not use decorative or script. Let's say, for example, I chose that really interesting font, decorative. Well, it might look good with the style Art Deco, but it's not going to look very good with arts and crafts. It doesn't look at all like that style. I want to pick a font that would be more generic, that would work with all styles. And that's the problem with script. Let's say that I get to a very modern contemporary style and I'm using a script, it's just not going to work. So sticking with serif and sans serif is a good idea. And again, you want to use the same font for the headlines throughout your journal. You don't want to switch and use a different font for each style because you want the book to look consistent. One thing you could do is you could use a type family. So a font, say like Avenir, has a lot of options. Everything from ultra light to heavy, from very bold to very condensed or italic. There's just so many options, as you can see. So I could use that one family and mix type, but create a lot of variety within my journal page. The key rule when you're mixing fonts is contrast. So here we see a couple of different ways that you can contrast type. You could have something very small and something large. You could play with weight, as you see the ultralight next to the heavy in the Avenir family. The form, so if I mixed a serif with a sans serif, I could really contrast the form. I can create texture, I can play with direction or structure. All of these are options. In your headlines, you're going to see that sometimes you'll have a really long headline like photography and the modern movement. That's way longer than cubism. So you want to use the same point size on your spreads. You could mix maybe 2 different point sizes max in a headline, but you want to be consistent. Like let's say the first line of the type, photography and the, would always be a larger point size. And then modern movement would be always a smaller secondary size. Then whenever I have a really long headline like corporate identity and break, visual systems on the second line, I'd use those same exact point sizes. In order to create your journal spread draft, you're going to need to be able to input both type and imagery in InDesign. So I've created a folder on my desktop called Spread 1. And inside that, I made a folder for the Victorian era and for the arts and crafts. So I'm going to open my Victorian era folder, and I've already gone and using the list of notable contributors, I've searched for images that would represent that style. Again, I always search by the name of the person. So I searched for Randolph Caldecott, for example, and I got this image. So let's say that I wanted to place this into my layout. I could just drag it and it's going to come into the layout. The problem is that I am going to have to be controlled in my layout by the proportions of the image because every image is going to be a different proportion. Do you see what I'm saying? Like these two are not the same proportion. But I could choose to use the rectangular frame tool, and instead of the image size controlling me, I could make a decision that I want to have images in my layout and I want them to fit maybe in a series of boxes. So I'm going to grab this selection tool and I'm going to Command C copy, Command V paste, and I'm going to bring another box here, Command C, Command V. Basically, I'm going to make a row of images that go across my layout. Then maybe I'll put my type up here and my style characteristics here, maybe a strip at the bottom where I would have the artist names. So instead of placing images and being controlled by their sizes, now I'm going to go here and I'm going to go to File, Place. So do you see next to Place, it's got a keyboard shortcut, and that's a Command D. So I'm going to go Command D, and I'm in my Victorian era folder. If not, I would just navigate to it. And now I'm going to grab that same Caldecott image and I'm going to click it. And this time, instead of the image being so big, I'm cropping it into my format. Command D, and this time I'll grab the Kate Greenaway image and I'm cropping it. And one more time, I'm going to grab the Louis Prang image. Actually, I'll go with the Charles Dana Gibson. Let's have a black and white image. And now notice that when I placed that, it was very small. So I'm going to go to Object, Fitting, and I'm going to fill that frame proportionately. So now, instead of my images being all different sizes, I've created this nice consistent zone in my layout. Now I'm going to have to make typography, right, in order for it to work with the layout. So I'm going to grab the text tool here and I'm going to draw a text box right here, and I'm going to go ahead and set my type Victorian era. And obviously I can highlight it and I can change it to whatever font I want. I'm going to use Avenir Next. And I want to make it bigger, right? It's awfully small for a headline. Maybe I'm going to make it about that size, and I could play with the weight of it, and I'm going to make it demi-bold. So now I've placed the headline, and using the arrow tool, the selection tool, I can position it, and I can use the little arrows on my keyboard on the bottom right corner, and that's going to allow me to very precisely lock it into the position. And I would go over here and I would build a similar construction. So I'm just Command C, Command V, copying and pasting my imagery as I go across. And I want to replace these images, Command D, and this time I want to go to Spread 1, and I'm going to go to my Arts and Crafts folder. And instead, I'm going to pick a different image. So now I'm starting to place the images from the Arts and Crafts side. And I just filled that proportionately, Command D, and I just need one other Arts and Crafts image. And so I'm going to use this Arthur McMurdo chair detail. So now I've got a strip of images. Let's say that I'm happy with what I've got. I've now got to put my style characteristics in. So we had said that we would put it in this box. Instead of having to enter all the text in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my folder, and here I had the syllabus for the course, and I'm going to scroll to page 5. Here's where the style characteristics start, and I'm actually going to just copy them, Command C, and I'm going to paste them, Command V, here. Obviously, I'm going to be able to change them. Maybe I want to stay in the Avenir family. Maybe what I'll do is I will make it medium. And so then I would do the same over on this side, right? And I want the baseline of the text to be aligned on both the left and the right side. So I'm pulling down an invisible guideline that won't print, but that I can use to help me align my text. So I'm going to grab it, and using the arrows that are on my bottom right corner of my keyboard, I'm dragging down to get the right position, but I don't have the right type yet, correct? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to my syllabus, and grab the arts and crafts type, Command C, and I left just one letter there so that I don't have to redo the font that I've picked, but I have really bad line breaks. Do you see I have orphans, one word by itself there? So I want to readdress that, and I need to make my subheads look different. I'm going to kind of zoom in here. I'm going to highlight the text, and I'm going to make the subheads italic first. So I'm making all of my subheads medium italic to differentiate them from the main thought. And I also want to recraft my line breaks. So crowding of, I'm going to break here. And I can start my subhead sooner to kind of fill the hole. And then here, I'm going to always break after a comma. That looks better. And I want to get rid of this one orphan, so I'm going to put that there. We had talked about the idea of having a strip at the bottom. And so what I've done, I've got my color swatches out here, and I'm going to go to that box and I'm going to drag a box across the bottom. Just to save time for this demo, I've already typed the type out. I just need to bring it to the front. And I made it in all caps in the same Avenir Next. And so basically, I'm going to position that. You can see I haven't done the right side yet. I can go to preview mode in screen mode, and I can kind of see how my layout's going to look. So how you choose to design your layout is completely up to you, but I'm hoping that this demo in InDesign shows you all the fun things that you can do and how easily you can change things and make them your own. So let's take a look at some journals courtesy of Graphic Design History alumni from the fall 2020 semester. First of all, let's look at the name of the person, always in the upper right corner. This is Colin Ingram's wonderful journal. One of the things I love about what Colin did is he created these beautiful grids of imagery at the top. And notice how consistent the grid is. They're images that are always locked up at the top. And instead of Colin showing us, notice that his style characteristics on the left and the right line up. He's chosen to use italic for his subheads, so they're differentiated. Everything is in lowercase. That looks really neat. And then when we go to the artist names, he's got them in a little strip at the bottom, but in all caps with this nice diagonal slash through it. Now, there's the draft at top. Again, you're only going to do the first spread. A spread is 2 pages side by side, and your spread is 8 inches by 16 inches. Each page is a square, 8 inches by 8 inches. So when we move down to the 2 featured spreads I'm showing, we see the next spread, Ukiyo-e and Art Nouveau. See how it looks just like the first one? All he did was then repeat the formula, and he replaced the images, he replaced the text, but the layout is the same. When we look at his Futurism spread, this is a spread that can be a little tricky because you want to remember that on the left is poetry. So it's always going to be a type-based work. And on the right, it's graphic illustration. So it's always going to be an image-based work. Notice how he made the headline bigger, but he chose a secondary point size for that headline for sort of a sub-thought, and that's working really well. Kate used these wonderful circles in her layout, And you can see how she's using the same font in the same exact size for all her headlines. One of the ways she figured out what size her headline type would be is she set, just when she was working on the draft, the longest headline, photography and the modern movement. And when she set it, which you'll see down below, she realized I can make this fit in this point size. So then she went back, and every other headline, she always made the same size. She always put her artist names in one line with a vertical slash in between, and she chose to include the dates, which is a nice touch. And she's got these overlapping circles. Notice how they're repeating in the exact same position. Now, on the very final spread at the bottom right is another tricky one. It's suprematism constructivism. And this is a spread that has the most style characteristics. So she wanted to make sure that she could make it fit with the spaces that she had. And she test drove those long sets of style characteristics to make sure she could. Take a look at Libby's beautiful journal. I love this colored band that she used. I like the way she's knocking her type out. Notice she's what we call bleeding the type out into the white area. So the white is traveling up from below into the text, which is making it very dynamic. And then she created this gorgeous carpet, like a quilt, of all the images. So her images were always different sizes, but the overall dimension of the imagery remained the same. And this created a consistent look and feel that you can see in her layout. She always made the artist names the color that the band was. So on this one, notice how she inverted the turquoise color to the right and then that sort of salmon color to the left. And she did that consistently throughout her layout, which is absolutely beautiful. And I wanted to show you her last spread on the bottom right. Notice it's postmodern design. It has 3 sub-styles: deconstruction, new wave, and retro vernacular. But what she chose to do was to put the columns underneath each subheading, which looks really nice and consistent. She only needs 3 total artist names because postmodern design is the whole movement. So there's one name from each sub-style. Notice on her futurism spread how the left side is all type-based works, where the right side is graphic. Now we move to Nadja's spread. She chose to play with opacity. So she had this pattern that actually came from an image in that style, and then she played with the opacity of the image by softening it. But it's very easy to do, and that way when she put the type on her layout, we could read the text. The background image did not interfere with it. Notice that strip, that opaque strip, is always the same exact size. So we can see down below how she applied it in a very consistent way to her entire journal. And now I hope you're starting to really get the idea that you want to create a unified look. And on this particular spread by Sarah, we can see that she used dots that she put in between her style characteristics. So she kind of made a long running line length. And her subheads are italic. Her main thoughts are bold. Her headlines are always in all caps bold. And she also included the dates. It's neat the way she did it. Do you see that 1820/1900? So she does that consistently in her layouts. And you can see how she used a secondary point size, always smaller, but it's always the same size. So when her long line length appeared, like photography in the modern movement or modern movement in America, the second line was always smaller. She chose to vary her layout where odd numbered layouts have the images at the top and the even numbered layouts have the images at the bottom. So do you see how the dates are below the images on the two spreads at the bottom? Because those are actually all even numbered spreads. So by doing this, she created unity with variety. Sherwin created a really neat timeline as well. I really like the colors he used, this gray and this yellow. And it's almost like we're watching a film strip slide by and we're seeing the dates. And it's neat the way that these align with the style characteristics. He created a carpet of images that are at the bottom. Notice they're bleeding off. Again, you'll notice most of these aren't showing the entire image. They're cropping the image. When you crop images in InDesign, it's great because instead of letting the size of the image control you, you're in charge and you can make it exactly the size you want it to be. Notice how he handled suprematism, constructivism down below. It's got two columns. So whenever things get long, like in postmodern design, he puts multiple columns and it creates a very unified look and feel. Look at Zeta's journal. It's so fun. It's like a scrapbook. I love all of the angles she's got, and she picked these black and white images to make large. So you can search for images like you could search for Charles Dana Gibson black and white. And it's only going to show you black and white images in your search engine, which we suggest using Chrome because you can search by size and you can also search black and white. And Google Chrome is very good that way. So notice how the black and white image sits on top of a collage of the other images which sit in the back. And notice how consistently she handled things. She has a secondary point size that she uses consistently, and this is such a fun journal. So as you can see, the sky's the limit. But whatever you create for the draft, you're going to repeat throughout your whole journal. You're going to make 13 total spreads that all look like they go together. And by the time you're done, you'll have a cover as well as a bibliography. So you always want to keep the link where you found the image. So you could start a separate document in any software you want. Maybe you want to do it in Word or Google Docs, and you just want to create something where you put Victorian era, and then you're going to just copy and paste the links from each image that you use in your journal. That way, it'll save you time at the end when you make the bibliography. So take a look at Marlene's. She's using this colored band at the bottom with this wonderful rule, and the colored rule repeats at the top. She's screening back this beautiful patterns that relate are part of each style, and then images sit on top of that in a very consistent lockup. Her colors change, and I think her color palettes are absolutely fantastic. There are many great resources online to help you select and work with color. And I've listed just a few here. So if you're looking to develop some palettes that you could use in your journal, check it out. I hope that this video was useful to help you get started on your Victorian era arts and crafts draft. Know that the journals I sent you didn't look like this the first time around. It took a lot of back and forth. So when your journal draft is ready, send it to me and I'll make a video screencast for you. And we can go back and forth as many times as you want. And my job is to help you really push your spreads so they look as great as the ones you saw from last semester. Know that there are support services available for you. You can watch the how-to videos in addition to this one that are in modules. They are created by a student, James Allen, and he'll walk you step by step through the directions to use InDesign and Word. Also, you can sign up to have online tutoring during the semester with our lab techs. When the lab reopens, you can also go directly to the lab in AH406 for in-person mentoring. So thank you for listening and good designing.